Is it gonna smoosh?
Oh, it definitely smooshes.
You have like blood like splatter around.
I'm just like the floor right now. Look at this. That's me.
What is this? Oh my god! Ah!
Hello everyone, and welcome to the OPSEAT video podcast. I'm your host Drew, or Droopy Jors, the social media director for OPSEAT.
And I'm Glitch Streams, or Noah, lead editor for OPSEAT.
Hi, and I'm Eric. I'm an editor for The Gamer.
And it's absolutely incredible to have you here, and just to kind of introduce everybody to what we're doing here. So we created this podcast to introduce you to successful gamers who have used various strategies to build personal brands and make a profit with them. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you enjoy your live streams or your podcast. Now, today, we're joined by Eric from thegamer.com, and we're really, really happy to have you on here. And just out of curiosity, for those that may not know, what would most people recognize, the website for, thegamer.com?
Yeah, so The Gamer has been around since 2017, and we are gaming news and features featured on the site. We are pretty popular for our live stream news. That's kind of what we're known for, is keeping up with streamers and what they do. And
it's absolutely incredible. Like we've had other news outlets and things like that on the podcast before, but the amount of growth that thegamer.com has had, either through its YouTube channel or just its mass following on Twitter, is astounding. Between 2017 and now. Right now it's almost at 1.5 million YouTube subscribers alone. And we're kind of curious what kind of, got everybody to start that, and like the news outlets for like the live streams and everything.
Yeah, it's not easy to start a video game website, and I have not been there from the beginning, but we are a small team, but we are always trying to find opportunities to reach a bigger audience. So we experiment constantly with what people are interested in, what is popular, and we're always just looking for those opportunities. Right now, as you can imagine, Pokemon is huge since Sword and Shield came out. And the more Pokemon traffic we get, the more Pokemon stories we want to do. So right now we're like almost mostly a Pokemon website. We've got so much awesome features and guides and hot takes and awesome stuff about Pokemon right now. So we float, we fill in the gaps, and it's been really successful for us.
Absolutely. And honestly, like I understand the Pokemon thing. Like, first off, the years, like almost a year worth of controversy, and then leading up to something that was actually a pretty good product. But we've noticed that you've only been writing articles for about a year for The Gamer. Could you tell us, like, when and how did you feel you were able to find like an audience, and how you personally got started with The Gamer?
Sure, yeah. So my background is in both writing and actually film. I was a filmmaker previously, but I always had a side hustle of writing. So I was at a website called Bloody Disgusting, writing reviews for comic books. I had my own blog that I was keeping track of. And just being a lifelong gamer, I always wanted to be part of the industry. So when the opportunity came along to write for The Gamer, I had a lot of samples from my previous work, and it was just a good fit for everybody. So that's how I ended up there.
That's actually awesome to see. And coming from a background in film, of course, we looked at the little bio and the blurb on thegamer.com, telling us a little bit more about you. Did you ever feel like you were going to be, like an editor or like a news article writer from, your previous educations?
I think like a lot of people's careers, you end up falling into what your interests are. I didn't actively ever pursue journalism or editing through school, but I was always an active gamer and an active writer. And I think that for me and for a lot of people, you just sort of end up doing what you like and what you're good at. So yeah, so I've really connected with editing and games writing, and I never thought that it could be a career for me. But it's been going really well.
Definitely. And I mean, so being an editor for such, like a massive website, what would you say is your favorite part about your role with thegamer.com?
I get a lot of opportunities through the gamer to see new stuff, to meet with developers, to talk about new games, and I really enjoy getting that first look. Um, I'm fortunate that I get to travel around the country and go to different conventions and meet with developers, and it's always really exciting to see, the newest, the latest, the coolest games coming out, and talk to the people that are actually making them. That's probably my favorite thing about the website.
Yeah, without a doubt. Go ahead, Noah.
I was saying like 100%. And so you kind of covered a little bit about what you did in college and how you originally
Yeah.
went to be a film student. Did you ever really see yourself doing journalism, or was it just something you kind of fell into out of like it was just some passion that you found out midway through?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I went to school for, well, I started working on my filmmaking in high school, and I went to college for film theory. I went to film school after that. And while that's still a passion of mine and I enjoy that, I have so much more freedom as a games journalist. I just have a lot more cool opportunities to do the things that I love. So no, I didn't see myself in this role, growing up or going to school and stuff. And, it happened to me through hard work and through passion for games.
100%. And so you say that you have all these cool opportunities and like you've
Yeah.
told us like how you get these first looks and all these super cool things, but how do you go about selecting the stories? Does the gamer tell you which ones to focus on, or do you get more choice on what games or what topic you write on? And what are some of your favorites that you've ever written or edited for?
Yeah, for sure. So our process, this is the first game website I've worked on, so I can't tell you if this is standard. But our process is that we have a group of editors, and they have scheduled shifts, and they pitch their stories during their shifts to the rest of the writers. And our stories come from both news events. We get a lot of press releases. Things happen on social media and on Twitch. But we also are very feature focused. So the gamer covers a lot of personality pieces and individual takes from our writers. So we think it's really important to have our individual personalities as part of the site. I think that there's plenty of game websites already that are sort of faceless, and the gamer is really passionate about our writers and our thoughts. So that's sort of what we focus on. Is I would say it's about 40% news, because you can get your news anywhere, But we try to focus a lot more on features and our individual ideas about games.
100%. And do you have any like favorite stories that you've gotten to work on?
Yeah. I have been working on this series on accessibility in gaming. I got to meet with and play and talk to these developers called Falling Squirrel. They're working on a game called The Veil that is a audio only game. It's a full first person RPG with no image. It's
Oh, wow.
all through audio. Yeah. So it's a
Huh.
totally fascinating project, and they have partnered with some uh, seeing impaired support communities,
Mhm.
and have worked with them to really make a game that doesn't use sound as a gimmick.
Yeah.
Um, it's natural to. It's actually, the game is actually easier to play if you can't see.
Huh.
Believe it or not. Yeah. Um, so I really am interested in accessibility in gaming, and developers that want to find ways to make games that can be played by more people that traditionally games wouldn't have been made for. So I've been covering audio gaming for a while, and you've probably seen the Xbox Adaptive Controller that has a
Yeah.
bunch of pads and
Yep.
stuff. So we're really interested in that kind of stuff, and that's one of my favorite stories I've gotten to tell, because I think a lot of people don't know that's out there.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really cool to be able to see, kind of how, even when I started playing games, between, when I was young and between now. But I'm kind of curious, how do you feel like, games or the gaming industry has changed even since you've worked, for the gamer, or even, on a news outlet? Because, I mean, you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. I think like everyone's sort of aware of this growing gap between AAA and indie.
Mhm.
And I think that we're getting to a point where people identify themselves as a AAA player or an indie player. And I I think that we're losing a lot of that AA space, a lot of that the known developers who don't have a huge budget but are still doing creative things. We're seeing less and less of that. We have a few examples this year. I think a good one would be the studio Spiders came out with their game Greedfall. But maybe you guys haven't heard of Greedfall.
I haven't personally heard of that, no.
No, see, so that's kind of my point. I think that when we were all growing up, there was a lot more games in that like AA space, a lot more games that weren't just EA and Blizzard and Ubisoft, but were like really cool, unique stuff. And we see so much less of that. It's really either the multi-million-dollar projects or the single developer creating a unique thing. So. Yeah, I think that's a big shift in the industry, and I'm sad to see that happen. And I'm sad to see things like Greedfall, which was a awesome RPG that came out this year that most people, probably haven't heard of. My other favorite one this year was called Remnant from the Ashes.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
Okay, it's a multiplayer Dark Souls-like, but it's a third-person shooter. Just a really cool game that's not on a lot of people's radar.
It's really cool, basically I mean, it's kind of sad that we're losing a lot of the AA space, but I mean, it's kind of like you either pick your polar opposites, and there are some that have like, I mean, Stardew Valley was written by one person, correct? Was it?
Yes. Yes. Stardew Valley has a team now on the publishing side because it's gotten ported around, and but the actual development of the game was one person. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really cool to be able to see like, certain passions come from small teams, and like, you really have them shine, from really small teams. I guess that's probably where the polarization comes in. Just cause, you have things like Undertale or Stardew Valley where things are just so good as an indie title that, I guess a AAA would have just messed it up. And I think that's another big thing now is, people kind of get let down by some of the AAA titles.
Yeah, that's true. I think that there was a lot of great games this year, but I'm struggling to think of any of them that I would consider like game of the year material.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of really good stuff this year that's all like really flawed in the AAA space. I get a lot of flack for saying this, but like I really like. Did you guys play Fallen Order yet?
I've
No,
dabbled
I've got
in
the
it.
chance.
I've seen so many people play it, but there are just so many little things that like just didn't make sense to me.
I hear that like the tutorial is just like a train wreck.
Well, literally, it's a train wreck. It's literally a train.
Oh, is it really a train wreck?
That's funny.
It is a good game, and it gets the Star Wars bump, but it's also got a lot of problems. It's a buggy game, and I found a lot of AAA games this year were kind of a letdown.
Definitely. But I mean, one thing that I'm really excited about to have you on the podcast, because I'm a huge fan of VR. And you do a lot of articles about VR, and like even some of the recent ones that you've been able to do, highlighting some of the cool AAA shooters or things like that. I mean, as an editor and as a writer, like how exciting is it to be able to play some of these games that are on the forefront of like expanding Technologies?
It's amazing. Let me tell you. I I'm the biggest fan of VR right now, and the biggest frustration with VR is that people tried it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and they said VR sucks, and it did. It doesn't anymore. It's really cool. There's a lot of really great, impressive experiences right now, and I think people kind of wrote it off. I partially blame, honestly, the PlayStation VR. I think the PlayStation VR gives a bad impression of what VR is right now. There are some cool experiences to be had there, but I think if you've tried the PlayStation VR, you have no, and that's all you've tried. That you have no idea what VR is right now. So, just in the last couple months, we've had these incredible, full, like what I would consider AAA games, like Asgard's Wrath, which is nominated for a Game Award. Stormland from Insomniac. Insomniac that did Spider-Man,
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank, Resistance. They have a whole library of VR titles, and I bet a lot of people don't even know that. They have like 5 VR games right now, and they're all incredible. So VR's in a really good spot. I'm really excited for Half-Life. I'm sure you guys saw that announcement.
Half-Life,
Yeah.
Alex, definitely.
Yeah, I hope that it sells units. It's good that it's on everything because a lot of people are never going to get Valve's $1,000
The Steam Index.
VR.
Yeah,
The
not
Steam
surprising.
Index. No, but it's good that it's available. It's available on Windows Mixed Reality too, which is a $100 headset, and you can play some awesome VR games for $100 if you have a decent computer. So yeah, there's a lot of really exciting things happening in VR right now, and I think people consider VR to be so niche that it's practically a rounding error in terms of the user base, which is true, but we need more people to check it out. It's actually really come along.
Yeah. So going back a little bit,
Yeah.
back to more doing the gamer stuff. In terms of how you cover stuff, what are some of the day-to-day tasks that, associated with what you do now? Is there, certain things that you have to do on the day-to-day, or is it like you work in the beginning of the week and just kind of let things come out?
No, so all of our editors have scheduled shifts and sort of a daily rundown of what it's like is that we have a certain quota of stories that need to be pitched, both news and features, and then we'll spend several hours editing stories that get submitted from our writers. We have probably 60-ish stories a day that get published on the Gamer. We put out
Damn.
a lot of content, on a busy day. So we have a whole team of editors that are constantly reviewing everyone's work and formatting it, and we create our own promo images. We don't have like a team of artists or anything like that to do our promo work, so we make our own headers and and just curating. Then we manage our social media. I'm part of the team that works on our Facebook and our Twitter, posting content there, interacting with our community. We have over 3 million followers on our Facebook page. So I'm constantly on our Facebook, following through with comments, interacting with people, seeing what's popular, and then sort of feeding that feedback back into what stories we pitch and what we are focusing on the site, because we want to cover the stuff that people care about.
And
That's a lot of stuff, to be honest. And how do you one of the biggest questions we always ask on the OPC podcast is how do you manage to do so many things? Because I see you're doing 2 articles a day sometimes on top of that social media, on top of making your own headers.
Yeah.
How do you manage it?
If you want to work in games, you have to work constantly, especially on the news side, because news never stops, and there's a lot of games to play, and there's a lot of stuff to write. So I have the benefit of making my own schedule a lot of the time, but you have to be very structured about how you use your time, because I can get lost in a game just like anyone else for a full day, but then I'm falling behind on the content I'm generating and the stories I'm publishing, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy to work in games as a writer, because I work 7 days a week. That doesn't mean I'm working 8 hours just writing 7 days a week. I do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
I travel a lot too. I do lots of interviews, but I work every single day of the week.
Yeah, that'll definitely keep you busy, and it's really cool that you're able to, even though you are busy, that you're able to split everything up. Because I mean, just being able to have that diversity in your daily tasks is probably, it makes you almost want to work 7 days a week. If you,
I
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite parts is that I get to do so much different stuff. There's really no monotony to my kind of job, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Then love
mean,
what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening, they're kind of curious how they might ever get their own foot in the door. Now, is it something where you would recommend where people start writing their own blog posts and start their own little journey?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Your portfolio is the most important thing you have. A lot of industries are about the connections you make, but I find that at least in games journalism, that there's a much more of a meritocracy, which I appreciate. If you can produce good work, it doesn't really matter who you're connected to, or what your experiences are. The most important thing is what you can produce. So if you are interested in writing for games, and I know a lot of people are, create the content. Don't wait for someone to pay you to do it. If you can write, if you're playing games, write those reviews, publish them online, put them up for free on a WordPress. Make a YouTube video and just talk your review out. If you don't want to write it, there's plenty of opportunities for video producing too. So yeah, your portfolio is the single most important part of getting a game in jobs, for sure. Getting a job in games.
And I mean, so many people want to work in games, and that's definitely a good tip. Is just go for it. I mean, even though you might be something after you work at even a 12-hour shift at something you might not like doing. If you're working in games, it's gonna be like working your hobby, and
Cathartic thing.
Yeah, if you want to work in games, you're playing games.
Yeah.
And if you're playing games, then you have content. You have opinions about what you played, write it down.
And that just that makes me think of a question, just like talking about VR and all the different like VR games, and like knowing that the barrier of entry is a little lower, and the barrier of entry to finding a quality game is a little bit lower now than what it was 5 years ago. What
Sure.
would you say your favorite VR experience has been within the past year?
Oh, no question. Until You Fall. Until You Fall from Shell Games is the most fun I've ever had in VR, and I've played some amazing stuff since then, and I still come back to Until You Fall. Have you guys heard of this?
I have
No.
not, and this
No.
is why I asked, because there are a lot of things that I know I wanted to pull out from the interview, and some of our listeners wanted to pull out, but maybe I also kind of wanted some personal recommendations on some VR games.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Until You Fall is a melee combat roguelike. The reason it's such an incredible VR experience is because, for one thing, you have full control over your playtime. A lot of these AAA campaign-focused games, just like a regular story mode game, it's hard to find a stopping point. They can be 40 hours long.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just can't play VR that long. A lot of people can't deal with the motion sickness and the disorientation of it. Until You Fall, you can play that game for 5 minutes or 5 hours, and it's a blast the whole time. Because it's a roguelike, I think that helps a lot. So what's so interesting about that game is the combat. You go into encounters where you have a weapon in each hand, and you're just straight up melee combat. You have blocks, you have counters, you have all kinds of techniques that you'll learn as you progress. Each room gets harder and harder, and eventually you fall. Until You Fall, you'll start back at the beginning, and then you can spend the points you've accumulated to unlock new weapons, upgrade your weapons, different weapon types, upgrade your passive abilities. It's a blast. Every room is a different encounter. It's all randomly generated. It's a roguelike. So you'll fight different enemy types. Some are big and strong. Some have shields, all kinds of different stuff. And every time you clear a room, you get an upgrade. That upgrade stacks as you progress through the game. And when you fall, you lose it. You start back at the beginning.
That's incredible.
So it's a rogue light in that sense, because there is constant progression with like new weapons and upgrading your weapons.
Mhm.
But then the rogue part would be that you are upgrading as you play, and then when you die, you start back at zero. The art style, the combat, like everything about it, it's an absolute blast, and it's a great workout. I think a lot of people don't take for granted that VR is like a great workout tool.
Oh my God, playing Beat Saber! I swear to God, I do that, I could lose 50 pounds in like a month.
Yeah, for sure. VR Upload, which is a site I like a lot, they just did a list the other day of like a workout regimen for VR games, like warm up with Beat Saber and then do your arms, your legs, the whole thing. And they recommended Until You Fall as like a cool down
Uh-huh.
for arms and legs, because you really do move both a lot in that game.
That's awesome.
For sure.
It sounds like
that's so
a
Awesome
much
game.
more inclusive version of like Binding of Isaac. Just like in a VR experience, like the way you describe it, with me not having any previous knowledge, it just sounds like a really cool Binding of Isaac in VR.
Did you ever play? This is like an old iPhone game, but it was the first like big iPhone game where it's melee combat and you swipe to match. Oh shoot!
Fruit Ninja?
Oh no! It was like the first one built in 3D.
It was in
And
Unreal.
it looked-
They used Unreal.
It looked
Engine.
amazing. I think I still have it on my phone, but I have too many apps on my phone. I remember it. I know what you're talking about. I can kind of see where you're coming from with that, yeah.
Infinity Blade.
Yes.
Oh yeah!
Yeah,
It's an
remember that
amazing
one?
game.
God!
Yeah. So if you've played Infinity Blade, this is like the VR version of Infinity
Ooh.
Blade.
All
It's
right.
cool.
I'm a happy Drew. I'm gonna play that probably later tonight. Now, kind of going back to how I mean, we're kind of curious, like where do more people learn about what you do and kind of like who you are as a person outside of thegamer.com.
Oh, what, like, I'm sorry, where people learn about me and what I do?
Yeah, some people might really respect the positions that you're in or anything like that.
Yeah.
Where do people kind of learn a little bit more about Eric?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I have a Twitter account at Epic Switzer. My last name Switzer, and I have open DMs there if you want to learn more about my role or writing games. If you have questions and stuff like that, hit me up on Twitter. That's sort of where I'm most prominent on social media.
Yeah, and Twitter is always going to be one of my favorite tools. And through everything that you've done, I'm also kind of curious. What are some of the challenges that you've come across? Being an editor for an always evolving gaming website, and always I mean it's news. It's 24/7.
Yeah. Really, like just the time management. The freedom is a blessing and a curse at times because we're decentralized. I'm one of the West Coast writers. I have the benefit of working from home. I choose when I want to do my stories, when I want to play games, when I want to write stuff, and it can be a challenge. You really have to be self-motivated, or at least learn that skill if you're not already, because everything I get to do is fun, but it's still work.
Yeah.
And I'm like most gamers, I could just very easily just turn on a game and keep playing and not stop. So the time management is for sure the hardest part, but that's the trade-off. That's I get to have so much freedom to do what I want when I want, travel, but you got to learn.
Yeah. So speaking about work and play, are there any events that you guys are planning on heading to anytime soon?
Oh,
where
for
people
sure.
can meet you and maybe talk about all like the gamer and everything in game writing.
Yeah. We'll be at PAX East for sure. I think that is first weekend of March, I want to say.
I believe it is like the last few days of February and then like 1st of March.
Yeah, we'll be at PAX East. I wanted to go to Unplugged. I don't think we're gonna make it this year in Philadelphia, PAX Unplugged. But if you're in the LA area, there's a couple of us that are at all of the big tournaments. Like if there's a Call of Duty, or we do Overwatch League. We have a big esports presence on the site as well. So the gamer's always at tournaments at least in the LA area. And then if there's a big convention, we're there. I was at BlizzCon, I was at TwitchCon, I was at PAX West. Like we're gonna be at every convention. So you can see that stuff on Twitter, and I'm more than down to meet up with anybody that wants to say hi or talk about the site or talk about working in games, for sure.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Now, all of us at OPSEAT, including some of us that aren't on the podcast, we always love asking this question. And it especially pertains to somebody who gets to review so many different things, like peripherals, keyboards, headsets, mice, even little arcade cabinets. But outside of your OPSEAT, besides the gaming chair, what would you say your favorite peripheral is?
Scuff Vantage 2. It's a custom controller. I have it downstairs. I was using it for VR, so I can't show it off.
Oh,
sorry.
You use it with VR?
Yeah. Oh, I use it with everything. Yeah, I use it at any game that I need a controller. That's my controller of choice. The Scuff Vantage 2. Have you guys seen the Scuff controllers?
The Scuff controllers have the extra pedals on the back end for extra controls, and then they have like the adjustable thumbsticks, and they're beautifully built.
Everything.
Yeah,
it's everything. And it's bigger. If you're an adult that plays PlayStation, you know that controller maybe is a little too small. Maybe the controller didn't grow with us as our hands got bigger. But the Scuff is like super comfortable, and the paddles, like you got to get used to the paddles, and I think that's a barrier for people. But you have to understand that like when you hold your controller and you don't have to move your fingers away, it makes such a huge difference in everything you play. Every finger hits a button. And you never have to move. There's no travel, It makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like, as long as you always have control over your thumbs. I mean, that's something I did in Halo 2, where I had bumper jumper before, Scuff controllers were a thing. Just making sure I never had to, like, take my thumbs off the joysticks. And it was awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I know that, like, PlayStation, Xbox aren't going to, Xbox has their Pro controller, obviously.
The Xbox Elite, yeah.
But like this should just be how controllers are. It really should.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like the pro version. This should just be how controllers are. It's just better.
And
game consoles let us program paddles. Give us some paddles.
Yeah. Let's get the paddles on there.
Yeah.
What are you guys holding out on us for?
And it just makes sense, especially from somebody who just loves the accessibility of gaming. I mean, that's a huge thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot more accessibility, and they market it as like the pro controller, right? It's like this is for people that take it seriously. It's like no, it's just more comfortable. It's easier to use. More options is better for everyone. It's just a better device, without
a doubt. And honestly, Eric, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the OPSEAT podcast, and I've loved learning a lot more about what you do and kind of like the routines that you have that make you so successful in the field. And I really, really appreciate you talking with us today.
Yeah, of course, it was fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So hopefully, everything goes well, and hopefully we'll see you over at PAX West, or I'll probably see you at PAX West. But I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon, and have an amazing day.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Take care.